Okay, let's unpack this. The numbers are pretty striking. Over 25% of adults in the United States are on antidepressants.
A quarter. Yeah. Think about that for a
And
second.
it's not just the U.S., right? Iceland's over 10%, Australia around 9%, Canada's up there too, near 9%.
Denmark, Sweden, Portugal, they're all showing high rates.
Even South Korea. And Germany saw a 46% jump in just 4 years. Spain and Portugal doubled in 4 years, a 200% increase.
Wow. So yeah, this isn't just like a few isolated cases. It's clearly a widespread phenomenon we're seeing.
Exactly. So that the question we really need to wrestle with is, is this reliance on medication a sign we're finally addressing mental health properly?
Or is it maybe pointing to something deeper, a kind of societal discomfort that we're maybe trying to medicate away instead of facing?
Yes, the core of it. The sheer scale really forces you to ask, are we actually getting to the root causes, or are we mainly just soothing the symptoms?
And that's exactly what we want to dive into today.
Right. Which brings us to this deep dive. We've been looking at a really insightful YouTube discussion, drawing heavily from the book Dopamine Nation.
Ah, yes. That book explores the whole pleasure-pain balance in our brains, dopamine's role, and how seeking reward and avoiding discomfort can get, well, out of whack.
Exactly. And our mission today, also looking at some articles, research, and the notes you gathered, is to really understand the perspective in that video about why this medication trend might be happening.
The argument seems to center on this idea of escaping pain.
Right?
And the sort of unintended consequences that might follow.
Precisely. What happens when avoiding pain itself becomes the goal?
Okay.
So, to really get into this, the video introduces us to someone named David. His story is used as a really powerful illustration of the arguments being made.
Right. Using a specific case study can make these ideas much clearer.
So, David.
Okay.
He first sought help when he was 20 at his university's mental health service. This was about 15 years before he saw Dr. Lembke, the book's author, back in 2018. So he was 35 then.
Okay, so a young person, university setting, that context is important. Academic pressure, social life, just figuring things out. It's often a stressful time anyway.
Definitely. And the video actually pauses right there to ask, are his initial struggles, anxiety, trouble with public speaking, grades dropping, are they really that abnormal for a college student?
That's a fair question. Some level of stress and anxiety is, well, almost expected in that environment.
Right. So David described having constant anxiety, physical symptoms like sweating, racing heart, a real fear of public speaking, stuttering, feeling inadequate. He was even starting to avoid courses that had presentations. Now, I think many of us can probably relate to feeling nervous before speaking in public, at least a bit.
Absolutely. A certain amount of anxiety in those situations is, physiologically speaking, pretty normal. The question the video raises is whether these feelings, even though they're uncomfortable, automatically mean there's a disorder needing immediate medication.
So David sees a university psychologist. And this is where, according to the video's perspective, things get a bit concerning. He took a test, supposed to last 45 minutes.
Okay.
He finished it in 5.
5 minutes, wow.
Yeah. And based on that brief assessment, he gets diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder, and GAD, generalized anxiety disorder.
That rapid diagnosis, it does suggest perhaps a system geared towards quick answers, maybe medical ones, rather than a deep dive into what's actually going on.
You finish a 45-minute test in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It suggests maybe not full engagement or a rushed process. The video definitely highlights that concern.
Right.
And here's the kicker. The psychologist's immediate recommendation wasn't more therapy or exploring coping skills or anything like that.
What was it?
Straight to a referral for a psychiatrist for medication. And the video is pretty critical here, pointing out that nobody seems to have asked about his life in detail. His sleep, his diet, exercise, what coping skills he might already have.
Seems like those things were just skipped over. Overlooked. The implication being that the focus jumped straight to a medical fix without really understanding the whole picture.
Which supports the argument that behavioral and lifestyle factors are fundamental, right?
Yeah.
And exploring those should probably come before, or at least alongside, considering medication in many cases.
So then David sees the psychiatrist. And just as quickly, boom. 2 medications, one for ADD, one for depression and anxiety.
Right away.
Right away. The YouTube video has a strong reaction, calls it a car disaster.
Okay, strong words.
Yeah, highlighting it as part of this trend. Medication first, ask questions later, maybe without really digging into the root causes.
Yeah, that fits the critique of just treating symptoms. The video uses a good analogy, doesn't it? Like a student who's anxious about public speaking because they lack confidence.
Exactly.
Instead of medicating the anxiety, the logical first step is, well, build the skill, build the confidence, practice training, coaching. Right. The speaker in the video even mentions his own brother, Badir, saying if Badir were in that spot, he'd tell him, go join Toastmasters, read books, take courses, check out Mastery Academy, focus on actually developing the skill.
So it's about fixing the underlying skill gap, not just masking the resulting feeling, the anxiety.
Yeah. And they extend that idea to physical things, too. Like, you wouldn't just give painkillers for chronic back pain forever.
You'd look for the cause. Weak muscles, poor posture. You'd recommend physical therapy, exercise, lifestyle changes.
Same for obesity. The real solution is changing habits, diet, exercise, not just taking appetite suppressants long term.
Makes sense. It's about addressing the foundation.
Which then leads to the bigger point in the discussion. This seeming over-reliance in society on medical treatments as the first port of call.
The go-to solution.
Yeah, and they loop back to David. He used the meds to cope with the anxiety around studying, presentations.
Which maybe helped short-term.
Short-term, yeah. But it led to dependence, needing higher doses. And eventually it started negatively impacting his personal life, his marriage.
So the core argument presented in the video is, for David, maybe the main issue wasn't actually a chemical imbalance needing meds,
or even the anxiety itself, fundamentally.
but rather the avoidance of the pain, the discomfort that came with those situations. The medication just became the tool to escape.
Exactly. And this is where the video turns it towards you, the listener. It asks, are there uncomfortable situations, uncomfortable feelings in your life that you might be avoiding?
That's a challenging question. It really prompts some self-reflection. Are we maybe too quick to look for an external fix for internal discomfort?
And do we maybe miss chances to grow, to build our own coping skills because of that?
Yeah, which ties into the next point they raise about what the speaker calls a kind of pampering culture.
Right, this modern tendency to maybe overprotect kids, shield them from any discomfort. He uses an Arabic phrase, yakristme.
Which implies what exactly?
Like excessive coddling. Shielding them so much that maybe they don't develop the ability to handle difficulties later on.
Okay. That connects directly to ideas about resilience. The video brings up David Goggins from Can't Hurt Me.
Yeah, his whole thing is that facing pain, facing challenges, that's what actually builds your inner strength.
Whereas a life of too much comfort, avoiding all hardship, it can leave you easily overwhelmed by, well, even small setbacks.
The video gives this example. Someone getting genuinely upset for days over a tiny disappointment.
Because they haven't built up that tolerance, maybe, that resilience that comes from navigating bigger stuff.
Exactly. It's about building tolerance for life's inevitable bumps.
The speaker in the discussion then shares another personal story about his brother Badir again.
Oh yeah, the swimming thing.
Right. Badir apparently really resisted learning to swim, just didn't like it, didn't want to do it.
And the speaker uses this to share a life lesson with Badir. Real strength isn't just about chasing pleasure or only doing what feels good.
It comes from
doing the things you dislike, the things you find challenging. He gives examples like sticking to work or school, learning new skills, even doing chores.
Okay, so connecting those seemingly mundane, sometimes unpleasant tasks
to becoming a, quote, respectable person. So it's highlighting this ingrained resistance to discomfort, even in something basic like swimming, as maybe a wider societal issue.
Got it. The underlying message seems to be that if you consistently avoid discomfort, your life actually becomes, well, smaller, less fulfilling, ultimately.
Yeah, because you limit your growth, your ability to handle the tough stuff that will come up.
Which leads to challenging this idea of living in a constant bubble of positivity.
Right. The video uses the example of family arguments. Points out they happen. They're normal, even in loving families. It's not all sunshine and roses.
Contrasting that curated, perfect image we often see on social media
with the actual reality of life, which is a mix. Good stuff, bad stuff, easy stuff, hard stuff.
So the emphasis is on accepting pain, accepting discomfort as part of the deal, not constantly using pleasure as an escape route.
Yeah. It's about emotional maturity, maybe. Accepting reality.
Which ties into another analogy they use dealing with bullies.
Right. Instead of only focusing on trying to get rid of all the bullies out there, changing the external reality.
That might be impossible anyway.
Yeah. It's more effective, they argue, to build your own inner resilience, your own strength to handle it.
They even reference Dale Carnegie, right? That it's often easier to change yourself than to change other people or the world around you.
Exactly. It highlights the power of our internal resources.
Yeah.
Yes, try to make things better externally, but building inner strength is more reliable for navigating whatever life throws at you.
Because pain, difficult people, challenging situations, they're probably always going to exist to some degree.
You can't eliminate them completely.
Right.
So to really drive this home, the YouTube video paints this picture. Two people on a subway.
Okay.
One is reading a book, requires effort, focus. The other is scrolling social media. Easy, instant pleasure hit.
Okay, I see where this is going.
The perspective offered is that the long-term outcomes for these two choices, repeated over time, are kind of predictable.
That really illustrates the delayed gratification versus immediate pleasure thing, doesn't it? Doing the hard thing now, even if it's not fun, often pays off much more down the line.
And then they bring in Goggins again, who quote him saying something like, "It's easy to become great today because most people are weak."
Wow, blunt.
Yeah, because most people avoid discomfort. It's framed as a direct challenge, really, to you, the listener. Try engaging with something you usually avoid. Just try it.
It's a call to action, isn't it? Step outside the comfort zone, embrace a challenge, see what happens, push past that natural urge to just avoid the unpleasantness.
Because that's where the growth potential is.
Exactly.
So the video then circles back to the start, this issue of reaching for medication as the first, maybe only, response.
Reusing that don't just reach for painkillers metaphor.
Urging you, the listener, when you're feeling bad, anxious, depressed, whatever, first, take a hard look at your lifestyle.
Before jumping to medical solutions, examine the fundamentals.
Right. Consider things like, are you getting totally overstimulated with dopamine from screens all day? Are you actually moving your body? What's your diet like? How's your sleep?
Because all those lifestyle factors have a huge impact on our mental and emotional state. It's a holistic view.
The advice is pretty straightforward. Try making some gradual changes there first. See what happens. Observe the effects.
Before immediately assuming it's purely a chemical issue requiring medication, try addressing those potential root causes.
It's about being more proactive, maybe preventative, with mental health.
Yeah.
Focusing on building that healthy lifestyle foundation.
Which might mitigate some of the things contributing to anxiety and depression in the first place.
So yeah, to wrap up our deep dive today, the perspective from that YouTube discussion really argues that alongside chasing pleasure too much, this avoidance of pain is the second big bad habit.
And it has these really detrimental long-term effects on our resilience, our coping skills, our overall well-being.
What's fascinating too is how linked they are, right?
Yeah, totally. The constant hunt for pleasure can actually make us less tolerant of discomfort.
Which then makes us want to avoid pain even more.
Exactly. And that avoidance hinders growth, potentially makes us more reliant on those external fixes like medication. It's a cycle.
So just a little peek ahead, our next deep dive. We're going to get right into dopamine itself and this concept of dopamine fasting.
Yeah, that's been getting a lot of buzz. We'll explore whether intentionally cutting back on dopamine hits can maybe reset our sensitivity to both pleasure and discomfort.
It builds directly on what we talked about today, digging into the brain chemistry behind our reward system.
And the potential upside of deliberately stepping away from those constant, easy sources of pleasure.
So if this deep dive resonated with you today, please do share it with someone you think might find it useful. And give us if you can, it really helps other people find these conversations.
And maybe